good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time it is. Thank you for joining the latest episode of Robinson Ventures Radio. And we have a special guest today. It says Sandra Miniutti, but we call her Sandy. Sandy, would you please introduce yourself and what you do, who you work for, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Sandy Miniutti. I'm the Chief Network Officer at the National Office for Family Promise. And collectively across the country, our goal is to help prevent families from experiencing homelessness and work with those that do slip into homelessness to help get them permanent housing.
Sandy, how does one become a Chief Network Officer?
I'm not sure. Let me tell you, my title has changed multiple times since I've been at this organization. I think that happens a lot in the nonprofit sector and especially at a growth organization. So I have had a twisty road to get to this place in my career. And I started out as a scientist way back in the beginning.
In what area?
Yeah, so my undergraduate degree, I'm a University of Miami Go Hurricanes fan.
We're very sorry.
It was
Very
a hard
sorry.
loss. We'll be back this year. We got a good recruiting going on right now. So I think we're going to have a better team even next year. We'll be back. My undergraduate was in marine science and biology. And along the way, I took some microbiology classes and I wound up working for Colgate-Palmolive in their microbiology lab under the brand Menin initially. And I did like releasing product. So testing raw materials, finished product, making sure that it complied with the FDA rules and that we could release it to market. And then from there, I wound up working in R&D, which was pretty cool, and worked on some new technologies to release product much quicker. And then I got pulled into the nonprofit space.
How does one go from launching product and a science background to is usually it's connection to purpose or some type of passion that shows up? How did that happen?
Yeah, for sure. So the nice thing about Colgate-Palmolive, when I worked for them, they had a program where they would pay for a degree in your field. So I took advantage of that to study for an MBA. I ran into a teacher at Rutgers where I was getting my degree that was doing arts marketing. She was establishing a new nonprofit in Newark called Glassroots based on Dale Chihuly's model.
Yeah.
The idea was to work with youth and to use glass blowing to pull kids in off the streets that maybe were doing risky behavior in other ways and use that as a way to boost their self-confidence, potentially give them a skill, but teach them marketing, teach them teamwork, right? Like if you're wielding hot glass around, you have to know how to do that dance with other students in the room. So I started working with her and put together a team of MBA students, and we wrote the initial business plan for that nonprofit. When I finished my degree, I found a position at a local museum and got to do some PR fundraising work for them. I really wanted to work in the career. Toothpaste is great, but I wanted to do something that changed the world a little bit more profoundly. I saw a position come open at Charity Navigator, and that really changed my path. Again, that was kind of another pivotal moment in my career.
Charity Navigator to Family Promise, or was there a stop in between Charity Navigator and Family Promise?
Yeah, pretty much. I was at Charity Navigator for about 16 years. When I interviewed there, they had just launched the website and started rating charities. So they had a process in place. And I started out as an analyst rating nonprofits. We were a private foundation at the time, so there wasn't a whole lot of fundraising, but we were doing a little bit, helped transition the organization to a public charity, helped start doing marketing. We monetized the website. We had advertising. We were really mavericks. We kind of shook up the sector. Whether you agree on our process for how we rated charities or not, I think it really disturbed the whole sector of how people view nonprofits. It was an exciting place to be. It was like a startup techie kind of experience. Then I did a small stance at a local theater as a financial analyst for them. And then I found the role at Family Promise, which really intrigued me because the whole job description was about entrepreneurship and building new things and growing and scaling. I had gotten to do a lot of that at Charity Navigator. We started off with just a few staff and really grew and had to put HR processes in place and finance processes in place. I really enjoyed doing that work. And at Family Promise, I get to help our roughly 200 affiliates across the country do that. It's a cool role.
Sort of a small world connectivity. My grandfather this is the Italian side of the family, was a glassblower.
Oh, that's cool.
I still have pieces of his. I have a paperweight with his name in it, right? And so if you've ever seen those solid
Yeah.
crystal paperweights with the lines in it, he spent an entire career working for, I believe it was called Bryce Glass
Okay.
in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, that eventually got acquired by Lennox.
Oh, that's so cool.
Unfortunately, he worked on leaded crystals. So when you're a
Wow.
glass blower and lead and the
Mhm.
crystal doesn't go so great together. I think you and I talked about this, the New Jersey connection,
Yes.
right? When Sandy said, "Oh, I live here," and I'm like, "Oh, I lived here." You go down Route 206 and you go to the such and such circle and you do,
It's a small
so
world.
yes. And then Charity Navigator certainly set up the, hey, I want to donate to somebody. How do I know they're any good?
Yeah.
Right. And so you go to Charity Navigator, and then they really pioneered the use of the 990,
Yes.
right, as a way to determine the fiscal health of a non for profit. Right. And so now folks make sure that their 990 is not only produced by your accountancy or your in house financial, it's a marketing tool.
It's a marketing.
You
Yes.
make sure your marketing department oversees your production of the 990, not the financial piece, but what
The
you fill in
narrative.
there. What's really interesting is that sort of a confluence of some work we're doing. I'm on the board of Social Current. I think this is, the
Yes.
story of how we ended up finding you. And Social Current is trying to pivot the same thesis, which is, man, the non-for-profit sector in the United States, I bet you, is $1 trillion sector.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge, right? And the work that's being done is so very important. Unfortunately, donors think like, oh, if I give my check to the American Red Cross, oh my gosh, their CEO makes $850,000 a year. That's wrong. When it's like, no, they're the CEO of a multi-billion
Yeah.
dollar organization,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you for saying that, because I think there was a lot of misconceptions. And anytime I did an interview with a reporter, I always talked about that. I talked about that to donors too. What you're looking for in the nonprofit sector is somebody that understands business operations in order to be a CEO. They have to know how to fundraise, they have to know their industry, and they're working on the most pressing problems in the world. And so now we're not going to pay them. We can't have exceptional CEOs and exceptional staff working on these challenging problems, and then we don't pay them because they work at a nonprofit. Like, it's just insanity to me. And I do think there's caps, because I do think
Yeah.
at some point it gets to be too much, and it should be a reasonable salary, because we are in this career to do good, but people shouldn't have to work second and third jobs to be a CEO at a nonprofit. They should be compensated well for their professional skills.
Non-for-profits are having to think about new ways to earn their income,
Yeah.
right? And yes, there's grant making opportunities. Yes, there's philanthropic opportunities with donors and corporations and whatnot. There are also earned income opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And just because you're a non-for-profit doesn't mean you aren't a business. No margin, no mission goes a long way in this sort of thesis. How do you pivot into these earned income opportunities that fulfill your mission and then allow you to do that charitable work that you want to, and using that earned income to subsidize the rest?
Yeah, yeah, and it makes your organization more stable. Like, we used to sell data at Charity Navigator because back then we were typing all the data, and now you can digest it from the IRS sometimes in a digital way. There was money to be made, and I think it's important for nonprofits to consider that. Like, where's their sweet spot that they can have that earned income to help subsidize the work that they do and not be so reliant upon the shifting winds in the grant space, right?
We've certainly seen that. I mean, regardless of whatever administration you're in at the federal level, those administrations have different policies,
Yeah.
different focuses, and those change and pivot. And when they do, you can't be 90+% reliant upon federal government grants and contracts because, the next administration, those may be gone. And so how do you
Yeah.
get yourself to that sort of balance of, we always think about it thirds, like it's third, you're still grant making, right? Various different types of grants, philanthropic and going in and figuring out individuals and donors and family foundations and whatnot, and earned income to be able to put that back in. Okay, I'm going to pivot here back to Family Promise and Chief Network Officer.
Yeah.
CNO to me in healthcare is the Chief Nursing Officer.
Oh,
So now
interesting.
we have a new CNO, a Chief Network Officer.
Yeah, well, when they published the role initially, I've been in this position about 8 years now. It was Chief Affiliate Officer. They thought that was a weird title, so they said COO, and that really wasn't what my role is. And I became Chief Program Officer, but now we have a programs team, so now I'm Chief Network Officer. So it's kind of been the same job, but different titles. My team's role is to help make our affiliates in the field as strong as possible. So the most effective and efficient they can be, to help them implement their programs in ways that are being the most impactful, to help them meet the unmet need in their community for the programs that we serve, to help them sort out, the executive director leaves. How do we go recruit and hire a great new ED to run that operation? How do we come up with a great fundraising plan for the next year, because we want to go into permanent housing space and we want to buy some apartments and lease them to families? Every day it's different, which is what I really like about this job. There's a different opportunity to problem solve with an affiliate, or to launch a new initiative, to work on exciting pilots with them. To me, it's a really cool role. It's like we're kind of like Dunkin' Donuts, right? Like it's a franchise model, but our affiliates are a little more like the Wild West. We have a freedom within a framework, but they're able to innovate locally and meet the needs of the local community with the resources that are available there, while we continue to work together under the same brand with the same core values, the same mission. So it's neat. It's different every day.
All the way back to the beginning of Family Promise in New Jersey. And I remember knowing about you guys because you were, what is a guiding light or a point of light at one point in time?
Yes, we did receive award nationally, and our initial branding was the Interfaith Hospitality Network, and then we rebranded to Family Promise. But yeah, our founder, Karen Olson, won an award. I believe the original Bush president awarded it to her back in the days, but she had a great idea. She was a marketing executive for Warner Lambert, and she would go into the city every day, and she just started talking to people experiencing homelessness that were on the street on her path going to work. Then she and her family started bringing sandwiches and sitting with them and having meals. She invited people back to her house for Thanksgiving, and it just really touched her heart. And she ended up having a conference in Summit, New Jersey. And this was over 30 years ago, and said, how are we going to deal with this issue? And at the time, a lot of the families experiencing homelessness was because they were being broken up by the state, because children were being taken out of homes that were unsafe and so forth. And the community kind of together said, well, what about congregational space? Churches, synagogues, and mosques are empty in the evenings. Families could stay there in a safe place. And we have congregants who can volunteer to bring meals and work with the families and be a support network. That's how it evolved and came to be in Summit, New Jersey. Other communities in New Jersey said, oh, I want to do that thing. And so we just kept growing over the last 30 plus years to this huge network. We're in 40 plus states across the country, and we want to do more and grow in the right ways so that we can have stronger affiliates across the country. But that's how it all started.
When I look at it, it's very much like female heads of household that are the ones that are experiencing homelessness with their children.
Yes, by and large, that's a big part of the population that we serve. Not exclusively. We have some, mom and dads, grandmas, dads who are head of households, but a lot of it, and I explain to folks who are like, well, how can you be a family homeless in America, right? And we don't see them on the streets, right? But if you think about it just from your own life, like it's so expensive. And if you're a single mom and you have a couple kids and you don't have a support network around you, one kid gets sick, you miss work a couple days, the next kid gets sick, you miss work a couple more days, soon you're out of work. Like it just snowballs very quickly. And housing is incredibly expensive in America. Every community, every time I talk to an executive director in the field, they're like, Sandy, let me tell you how expensive housing is here. I'm like, I know it's everywhere. So it's very hard if you're in that situation to catch back up on rent and get out from under all that.
Well, in Robbins Adventures, we many times sit at the confluence of healthcare and higher ed. And both healthcare and higher ed systems see that homelessness coming through it,
Right.
right? The mom who has a sick kid who comes into the ER, and then you realize they're living in their car,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
That's where home is. You're at a community technical college, and that mom's trying to get her CNA or her
Yeah.
LPN, and they're living in the car. And, what do you do to support them? And I know, many times, like the last stop we had in Louisiana, South Louisiana Community College, where my wife was a chancellor, they worked with the local newspaper, which was getting rid of all their newspaper boxes, and they turned those into mini stations for food, right? There were mini pantries, and they worked together to do that. And what they realized was there was a certain percentage of all of the students that were going to the community
Yeah.
technical college that have experienced or were experiencing homelessness within the last year. And so I think people sometimes choose to turn a blind eye to just how prevalent homelessness is in the United States
Yeah.
and how important the work you guys are doing at Family Promise to solve it is.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's unseen. And that was, I think, part of the beauty in this initial model is that the families were then staying in the houses of worship where people came in. And like even my congregation, my family and I, we used to go volunteer and set the beds up for the week and meet with the families and have dinner with them. And so part of what made the model work so well is it helped the community see what this problem was and how they could actually participate in solving the issue. COVID really changed the model on us. We couldn't do that type of shelter during COVID. And so many of our affiliates now, our sites in the field, they have what we call static sites. They'll have a home or apartment buildings where families will stay there instead of a sheltering in a congregation model. And also just the way that things are changing. A lot of congregations aren't thriving, so they didn't have the volunteers to help do the program with us. So it's really looking different. But the cool opportunity there is that we've seen affiliates partner with congregations to take over their buildings so that the congregation can still worship on the weekend. But during the week, that space has now become apartments, either permanent housing or temporary shelter housing for families, office space for our program staff. So there's a lot more opportunity there. And I think Family Promise is well positioned to take over those spaces in partnership with congregations because we have those connections in the community.
It's been an interesting process talking to your affiliates as part of our project that we have
Yeah.
with you. And these affiliates are anywhere from a few $100,000 a year in size to multiple millions of dollars a year. And
Yes.
talking to the executive directors everywhere and in between, right? And so the commonality is that they're all trying to solve for homelessness in their community. My favorite was talking to a group. They were in the upper Midwest. They were like, look, there was a mobile home park that was going to go toes up, like literally was entering foreclosure. And they came in and they bought it. They renovated all those mobile homes and they started using it as additional housing. Yes.
Yeah.
They were working with the homelessness to home program, which they were
Yeah.
talking about, like how they used that at the temporary spot, how their congregations helped them with their homeless population. But then they were trying to find ways for these folks to get workforce development, affordable health care, and then moving them out into, hey, this is your apartment or this is your home. So it was really interesting to talk to them and
Yeah.
the various different ways people were, and it was so hyper specific and local, right?
Yes. I mean, we have a holistic approach to working with the families. If a family does come into shelter, our primary job with them is to get them into permanent housing. And then once they're there, then we operate our stabilization programming, which is all those things, workforce development, financial literacy, whatever that family needs to help make sure that they remain stably housed over time. We have families that come back, end up being donors and volunteers, and it's really cool. And you're right, like there's so much variety in our network from really small affiliates to multi-million dollar operations. The mobile home park is an interesting piece too. There may be earned income there for us, not just from the rents and so forth, because in those parks, it's not just Family Promise families, there's other families, but also in the operations of them, other mobile home parks could hire a company run by Family Promise that would help you manage those properties. So there's some things that we're trying to explore moving forward. I think the thing that's unique about the work that we do, it's not cookie cutter. It's different for every family, which can be hard to maybe understand sometimes as a donor. Like we can't bring in 1,000 families and pump them out the next week because it is so hyper specific to that family and need.
I'll say, I think that, at least I've noticed with people my age, is that there is sort of this recognition that homelessness is not a blanket
Yeah.
just statement. Not everybody's homeless for the same reason in the same situation.
Yes.
And so it's really cool to see a program that treats it as individual cases as opposed to just, get them in, house them, get them out.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And there's a lot of misconceptions that it's people with drug problems or whatever, right? And we talk a lot about the impact on children, even just a short stint for a child in a shelter, as wonderful as the shelter may be, that can have a lasting impact on their behavior and their outcomes in life. So we really want to do as much as we can to mitigate that. A lot of the investment we've done in programming in the last few years is on the preventative side. So if a family presents and they need shelter, are there things we can do to keep them out of that shelter? Can they stay with grandma another couple of weeks until we can get them into an apartment they can afford? Like, how can we mitigate that trauma for a child is really critical. But whatever is going around that child in their life that got to them to that point, I think we can all agree that that child deserves the best future possible. We really focus on that child and making sure that they are in a stable, permanent housing as quickly as we can.
Sandy, I was talking to an affiliate yesterday where they have, I would call it sort of childcare programming,
Yes.
so that
Yeah.
while you're in transitional housing and you're going to work, your child can be taken care of. And what I loved about it, and this is something that you do in healthcare, it's trauma informed care. And so the entire daycare was set up around mitigating trauma, conducting trauma informed care, and all these kids got their adverse childhood experience or ACEs score. Unfortunately, in the United States, if you tell me your education level and you tell me where you live, man, I can pretty much line up your healthcare outcomes, how long you're going to live, and then you layer in an ACEs score. And if that
Yeah.
ACEs score is a certain level or above, it
Yeah.
exacerbates the whole thing. We got to talk to an affiliate that is in Hawaii, right?
They're doing amazing work. Yes.
But it's not cookie cutter, man. Like you're out in
Oh,
Hawaii, that's a whole different calculus than if you're in the South, if you're up in the Midwest, if you're over in the Northeast, on the West Coast, right? You can't treat it as the box. Now,
yeah.
that said, Sandy, I think what part of your chief networking officer is to try to lend some standardization to certain things. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's been a little bit of a pivot for us over years. I think the way that we formed was very grassroots. It was very dependent on volunteers. The internet wasn't what it is now 30 plus years ago. And so now there's opportunities where we can have more standardization so we can have some economies of scale. And the work that we're doing together is to figure out, are some opportunities there in the HR finance space that we can help take some of that off the plate of the affiliates so they can concentrate on the programming, which they do best and know better than anybody. We're definitely working on more of a freedom within a framework for our affiliates. Like what are those things that we can help them synchronize on to help get them some economies of scale too?
What can people do to support Family Promise?
I mean, see if there's one in your community and then reach out and offer to volunteer. Of course, donations are always welcome. And just be conscious if you are someone in the community that has children in school, it's probably not unlikely that there's a child in one of your child's classrooms that is experiencing homelessness. And it doesn't mean that they're sleeping on the street. Could mean that they're in a hotel, could mean that they're couch surfing, could mean that they're in a car. But we should all be sensitive to this issue and become more aware of it and figure out what are the things that we can do in our community to help. Volunteering with us is a wonderful way. It doesn't take a ton of time. You could bring a meal. You could offer to help babysit if a program's going on. There's lots of ways to get involved. We have kids do their Eagle Scout projects with us. We've always been extremely community focused and very volunteer driven over the years.
My final question is, what is something I should have asked you about that I didn't?
Oh, wow. Maybe I just go back a little bit to my charity navigator days. Like I worry that people are becoming a little numb to giving in America. We're seeing more and more of the donations come in from very big donors. Some of the tax incentives have changed. And so everyday donors maybe don't feel as empowered that their gift is going to make a difference. And I'd want donors to know that every dollar does matter and that you should find your philanthropic passion, research that nonprofit, and then give to them without handcuffs, right? Like let them spend the money the best way that they know how to spend it. Because if you've done your research, you should trust them to do that. We may get a lot of money for shelter, but if we had more money for prevention and diversion, wow, we could prevent a lot of incidences of homelessness, right? So I would just say that that would be the one thing that I've always been most passionate about is encouraging to give more, but to do it in a thoughtful way. Like it should be almost the same level as investing in stock, right? This should be the thing you're most passionate about. You should go find those nonprofits doing that work and stick with them over time.
Yes, ma'am. The unrestricted gift given with
So,
love, it can
yes,
be the most powerful gift.
yes, yes. Yep.
Thank you for your time today. This has been
My
great.
pleasure.